Hi everyone! Today we have Dr. Claire Russell with us to talk us about more about the research life and how students can get more incorporated with the research career in the future. So, hello Claire.
Hi Angel, hi. Thanks for
Hi,
inviting me.
thank you for coming. We're really pleasure to have you here. Okay, we'll start with the first question, if that's okay. The first question is, can you please introduce yourself and tell us the main milestones of your career?
Yeah, so I'm Claire Russell. I'm a senior lecturer at the Royal Veterinary College. And I always have to qualify with that with I'm not a vet. I have doctor in my title. I'm not a medical doctor either. I have a PhD. Okay, so let's just straighten that out for a start. So yes, I'm senior lecturer at the RVC. And how did I get there? What did I do along the way? Well, so I obviously did an undergraduate course, which was in biochemistry at Imperial College. Then I did a PhD at University of Sussex. Then I did some postdoctoral work, and that took me to Imperial College, then to King's College London, and then to University College London. And then I applied to work at the RVC, and they took me here about oh gosh, it's nearly 15 years ago now.
Wow.
and I've been here ever since.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Very cool. And then what originally sparked your interest in research and why developmental biology specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose probably like a lot of veterinary medicine students, I, was interested in science generally. I had all the interest in, biology, chemistry, physics, maths, but I suppose more chemistry and biology than anything. And I remember when I was 13, I said I wanted to cure cancer.
Wow.
I now know that that's, a pretty tough thing to do. I mean, at the time, I thought there was only one sort, really. Now I realize there are just thousands of ways to cure cancer. So, yeah, but, I realized that this is the sort of thing that science could do, I guess. Then when I was doing my degree, which was in biochemistry, which sort of stems from my love of chemistry and biology, really. In my third year, I chose some courses which were development courses because we'd never really done any development. It had been quite, it had been proper biochemistry and molecular biology, cell biology. And so I had these developmental biology courses, and I did a project in developmental biology using fruit flies. And I just suddenly realized, it suddenly clicked with me that here was a way where you could actually study the function of something in an organism rather than in cells, right? So you could actually see what happens to the whole organism if you mutate a gene, for example. And I just realized that was really a powerful thing. And so that's what got me into developmental biology, really. And then I would say I pretty much stayed with it. I still use developmental biology, but I tend to use it now to study diseases a bit more than just the development.
Like the application of the developmental. That's very cool. That's a very, very great ambition for 13 years old.
I was a bit naive, I'd say.
That's very good. Very inspiring.
I did want a Nobel Prize as well for my effort.
You want a Nobel Prize?
Yeah, I want a Nobel Prize for curing cancer. That's what I remember saying.
Oh, the ambition. How did you go from there into actually doing academic research?
So during my third year of my degree, I suddenly realized I hadn't decided what I was going to do next. And, my degree was 3 years. And I'd done this project in this person's lab at Imperial. And so I was just talking to them, about options, because I realized that I had actually done some work experience before I'd gone to uni, but not really during uni. And so I was talking about options, and I just said, well, would you be able to take me on over the summer And, so they did. I was lucky. And then when I was working with them over the summer, I think they must have seen something in me that was, that meant that I had some aptitude for research, because the lab head said to me, I've heard of these PhD positions available, maybe you should apply. So, we'd obviously, I've obviously shown enough interest. And so I applied, and again, it was using fruit flies and doing developmental biology. And they offered me PhD, so I definitely took it. And then that was it, really. There was no stopping me. I was doing what I wanted to do, and just loved it.
That's really good. That's really good. So it's kind of, you haven't planned for so long, but then you take the opportunity.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So when I was at school and doing my finishing my what we called O levels, that's how old I am in those days, and then doing my A levels, I'd done some work experience. So I'd gone to the hospital and I'd worked in a lab doing dip tests and plating out feces to see what would grow, and awful things like that. And I realized that was a little bit too humdrum for me. I would be doing the same things every day.
Yeah.
Just if I did that when I finished my degree. And so, I, as much as I was interested in how that was all working and what it was showing me and everything like that, I just didn't want to do that every day. And the other work experience I'd got before I started my degree was at a company called Rent-A-Kill, which sort of do pest control. And so I was involved in, how do they regulate how do you meet the regulations of products? So that's sort of thinking about safety and chemistry and things like this, and biology. And I was really interested also in because pest control is important for feeding the world, right? And it's a really big problem as to how you feed the world.
Yeah.
Enough. So that was sort of, and I knew that work experience was a good thing to do, because that was telling me whether I liked things and whether I was interested in things, and was helping me formulate my direction. But during my actual degree, I never really got around to it, which was terrible of me, until the very end. and so, so I did finally get around to it, and obviously was lucky that I managed to get some experience in something that I did like and wanted to then carry on with.
That's very good. And is there one research project that you're particularly proud of, and why?
Yeah, there is. So up until the point of coming to the RVC, I'd been working for other lab heads, other principal investigators, and I'd helped supervise other people, and I'd written papers, and I'd got some small bits of funding and that sort of thing. But once I got to the RVC, all of that was just down to me. I was now the supervisor, I was now the principal investigator. I got all the funding, and so actually the thing I'm most proudest of was my first publication as an independent principal investigator. So from my first PhD student, Fahad Mahmood, he was here at the RVC, and we published 2 papers together, and so the first one of those I think is the one I'm most proud of, because it was my step to independence, really.
It's like a milestone, and that means a lot to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And what is the project actually about, like the research aspect?
Yeah, so that one was about a disease called, short name is CLN2 disease. It's a type of neurodegeneration, and you see it in both animals and in humans. And it's inherited neurodegeneration. It's also what you call a lysosomal storage disorder. So the lysosome doesn't work properly. There's a dysfunctional enzyme in the lysosome, and you get all this stored material, and somehow you end up with neurodegeneration. So for kids, children with it, it's really severe. It's fatal. And there are dogs with it. Long-haired Dachshund dogs can be carriers for it, and sometimes you get some long-haired Dachshunds that have the disease. And so we were modeling this disease in the zebrafish, in the embryonic zebrafish, in fact. And the reason for that is because in the zebrafish you can do a lot more experimentally in a whole organism. So this is using my developmental biology skills, basically doing functional analysis in the whole organism. But also you can do drug discovery. So you can try and test lots of potential compounds that might end up being treatments one day, really quickly with the zebrafish, at least with zebrafish embryos. So we made this model, and we showed that it was a good model of the disease. And then ever since then, I've been using that model to do drug discovery and to find out more about the disease. So it's been really sort of foundational.
So you turned from using fruit flies as a model to zebrafish.
Yeah. I did that during one of my postdocs. I felt like I'd learned quite a lot about fruit flies and how to use them, whatever, and I thought I needed some other organisms under my belt. So I decided to go to a lab to learn how to use zebrafish and do developmental biology with them.
I see. Okay, the next question, I quite like the next question. Do you think the research component of the veterinary medicine course is sufficient enough to develop adequate research skills?
Yeah, I might get in trouble here, right?
It's a tricky one.
So on the RVC's veterinary medicine course, there you are trained in the basics of research, I would say. So you have to be able to search the literature, find relevant information, read it, digest it, integrate it, be able to write about it, be able to do some investigation, collect some data. So all of that is you're given good experience in. I think maybe what you could have more experience in is different ways that you can collect and analyze data, because that's where the variety sits, I think, really. So I think that's, you get now actually on the course, it's just sort of changed a little bit recently. It means that the students really get one major research project.
Is the one that's cancelled, I heard from.
Yeah. So it's just, the diversity of how you do the research, the actual sort of getting the data and analyzing the data, the diversity of that is something that's maybe a little bit limited, but everything else is there and is practiced on the course.
Okay, hopefully we all develop some research skill when we graduate.
Oh yes, definitely, because the research project you do towards the end of the course, is proper research, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, and the next question. Have you experienced any difficulties in your research career? And have you ever thought about quitting?
The main difficulties are getting funding, being persistent enough to get published. Actually, they both need a lot of persistence, funding and publishing. I mean, publishing happens eventually. Funding is, less guaranteed.
Yeah.
So that's the hard thing. I've had periods where the funding's really low and it's really hard to carry on with the programs that you want to do. So there was a point where the funding was quite low, and I was thinking, maybe I'm just not competitive enough in this, but actually sometimes it's all about politics and how much funding is out there, and not actually about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's not necessarily that you're suggesting research that's not as good as other people. It's just what's a little bit in vogue at the time. You know, that's quite an influence as to what gets funded.
It must be quite complicated, like all the side of like the school politics, and then how the society deem like the project, if it's like beneficial for the society and stuff.
Yes, I mean, you do have to talk quite a lot about that in your grant proposal. You know, what are the benefits to other scientists, to society? Yeah, that's quite a thing. But the science has to be top notch, you know, no holes in it at all. And you have to show that you can actually do all of those things, that have previous experience of having done the sort of things that you're going to propose to do. So, you know, there's quite a lot of things that need to come together to be able to get funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, having said that, the grant that I have at the moment, I've just got a postdoc started on it, and it's a grant together with UCL. I was really surprised because our initial feedback about the proposal was okay, but not great. And so we all thought, well, it's not going to get funded. But what you do is you send what we call a rebuttal back, and you explain why it's better than they think it is, you know, and you fill all the holes that they picked, you know, and you explain everything. And then they funded it, all of it, all the money, everything. So I was really surprised.
Congratulations.
Yes. So sometimes you just don't really know. But yeah, so when funding was low, that's when I thought that maybe I wouldn't carry on and I should maybe do something else. You know, maybe go into like a position where there's more teaching and less research.
Yeah.
But currently I don't think that, which is good.
That's good.
I'd like to say one other thing that's been difficult, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm a middle-aged woman, and you know, one of the things that hits all women at some point is menopause or perimenopause.
Yeah.
And there's been some over the last few years, actually, that perimenopause has been in the news a little bit, as to how it might affect women and their relationships and their work and, you know, everything, and how maybe they need the odd adjustment and that sort of thing. And it hit me bad. So, you know, I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I was like, how can I, you know, how can I work when I feel like this and I'm having to go for all these doctor things and whatever. But it passed, you know. And so that's, you know, a really big challenge that will affect half the population. And actually a lot of scientists, especially, you know, there are a lot of women in biological sciences and a lot of women in veterinary medicine as well.
It must have like a lot of stress, and then also like the society anticipation to women and how women physiologically just a bit different may affect the career and stuff.
Yeah, it's the thing is, I guess it's like, if you can think of a disease where it can have a lot of different types of symptoms, that's really complicated, and you think like, okay, there's some diseases where you know that if they have these symptoms, it's definitely this disease, and there's other things when you say, oh, you know, that could be that or that or that, you know, so, you know, really weird standard things like fatigue, you know, gut issues, you know, and it's like there could be anything that causes it, and you know, and then suddenly you realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm a middle-aged woman. There's nothing wrong with me. This is a normal change. But you know, all those things just affect how productive you are, and no one's thinking, oh, you know, so and so is going to be less productive for these next few years, you know, and making allowances for you. You've still got the same workload as ever. So yeah, so I thought I'd mention that just because actually there are a lot of women in veterinary medicine, and I'm also on a committee, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and you know, I think these are important things to just get out in the open, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this experience. It's like 30 years later, I will definitely think of this in my mind. It's in my mind, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next question is, what do you enjoy the most about research?
I think it's about just finding out new things, really. Just that, yeah, understanding something that you didn't understand before.
Like
You know,
answering the curiosity.
yeah. I do like just the doing, but I don't actually get to do that very much anymore.
The thinking part, no?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So now, like, I have people that do the doing, and I do the thinking more. And then I guess the other thing is the fact that I'm glad that I managed to get to a position where I could do science, which I think could translate to be, to have some sort of benefit to patients perhaps one day.
Yeah.
Because that was what my 13-year-old person sort of wanted.
Yeah.
and I've picked up a lot of skills along the way, and now I'm actually using them to do that, so or at least contribute to potential therapies. So that's quite a sort of driver for me, I would say.
That sounds very rewarding. Yeah, that's very good. And as the placement year coordinator, could you give us a brief introduction of the placement year and why would you recommend it?
So the placement year is a year to leave the RVC and go and work within another organization. And so it's not study, it's work. And during that work, you will do some research, or you might do a lot of research. We do require you to do some research in our placement year because that's what we assess you on mainly. The other main thing that we assess you on is your ability to develop reflective process. So the different thing, one of the main things about when you go out in the world of work is that less people are going to say to you, oh, so how did that go? What are you going to do differently next time? You just have to start doing that yourself. And so that's something that we try and develop during the placement year as well. So, students can do anything that's related to their degree and on the placement year. And I think it really gives them a chance to try different things that are just slightly, adjacent to the mainstream. So when I think about the students that have done it who are veterinary medicine students, and I think about the reasons why they did it, in some cases it was to make contacts within a specific type of veterinary medicine that they thought might be difficult to get into, or, well, in the case I've got in mind, actually, this student wanted to go and work in like third world countries as a vet, but wondered whether you could actually make a living doing that. So that's what she went and did for a placement year, and met people that made a living doing that, realized that this was something that she can do, and I hope she is doing it now, I'm not sure. And I'm thinking of another student who realized that she really wanted to develop her communication skills. She was quite an introverted person, and she needed to just have the opportunity to see that it was okay to go and talk to vets about whatever, or other people about whatever it was, that it was okay to speak up. And so she went to a market research company for veterinary products, and so that meant that she was doing market research, so she had to call vets, she had to discuss things with them, and she really developed those communication skills and gained confidence. So it's really, depends on what it is. You can use the placement year to develop anything that you want to develop, I think, is the main thing. Something where you think you would want to develop it more for whatever you may be imagining in the future for your career. And certainly if you wanted to go into a career that's more competitive, then being able to say that you've actually got some experience in that already can make quite a difference, I think.
And then what kind of student, like any student who wants to, like you say, develop their skills, or maybe just not like confident, like maybe I want to do this, but I'm not sure if like the rest of my life I want to do it. It's a good year to that and go try.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point, because so the other way to look at it is that a lot of veterinary students, they go into veterinary practice and they're very happy for up to 10 years. And then they think, I'd like to do something else a bit now. And, about half of them will actually start to do something else. And if you've already tried some other things, then you might have an idea of what that might be. And you might already have the right experience to get into what that is. So a placement year is also a good way of getting to know if you're interested in doing a particular type of thing. Does that suit me or not, right?
Yeah.
But it's a fairly small commitment than actually going into a new job, and which is open-ended.
Like the cost for 1 year is much lower than the cost afterward when you really want to try something.
Yeah, exactly. You don't actually get opportunities of just trying something for a year once you've graduated, really. You're really either on track for something that you really know you want to do, or you're doing your veterinary practice, or you've changed and you don't know what you're changing into because you haven't experienced it yet, right? But you're making the change, and then you're sort of in it, and would have to get out of it again if you didn't like it. So it's good to sort of have some other experiences. I know veterinary students have a lot of experiences before they start their degree, and a lot of them are around, going to farms and veterinary practices and such. But this gives you a chance to do other things, that are even more different than that.
Yeah. Well, now I want to do placement year.
You've you taken the opportunity earlier, Angel?
Yeah, I passed it. Too bad. Okay. The next question is, in your opinion, what are the most important qualities for being a researcher?
Yeah, I came up with persistence, I think, like resilience.
I get the first few questions.
Yeah. I mean, like, you really, if you're just doing like even bench research, things don't always go to plan. It's certainly within biology, there are a lot of variables and you think you've controlled them all, but you haven't. You just don't know. You don't know whether the person next to you has contaminated your solution because you weren't watching yesterday. Do you know what I mean? So not that happens often, but
it happened.
But that sort of thing does happen. Yeah, exactly. And so there's always like troubleshooting, and there's always a little bit of there's always something that will let you down at some point. You really do need to pick yourself up and just keep going. So when you get to my stage and you applying for grant funding, you might get funded 1 in every 5 or 8 applications, right? It's not, that's like 4 knockbacks for every 1 pat on the back, and if you're publishing, you try and send it to a really good journal, and then they say no, and then you send it to another journal, and then they say, oh, well, send it out for review, and then the reviewers say they don't like it, then you send it to another journal. So you really just have to persevere. So I think persistence is probably the biggest skill that you need.
Yeah, sounds like you also need like the courage, like if people reject you but then you still believing like your project, that kind of persistence.
No, that's absolutely true. You're well trained, you know what you're doing, you understand everything that you've written in your paper, and and it's all worthwhile, and you have to still believe all that no matter whether you get a knockback or not. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. And what practical advice would you give to students who want to get into research?
So one of the simplest ways to get into it is to spend a summer doing a research project. And if you join a society, I'm not really sure about for veterinary medicine students, but more generally within biology, like there's things like the Genetics Society, Biochemistry Society, Physiology, Anatomy Society, all of these societies provide summer studentships. And normally what you'd do is you'd sort of be thinking at, I guess, beginning of your second year, maybe like first term to Christmas time of your second year, you'd be thinking, oh, I'd like to do a summer studentship this summer. And so you'd probably think, well, what sort of a research would I like to do? You know, maybe a topic that you'd like to do, or maybe you'd had a lecturer that you just thought was really inspiring, or, you know, so you'd like to work with them or something. And so you'd approach someone who can host your research, and together you'd develop a project, and then you'd apply to one of these societies for funding. And then you, because it's like a grant, you cross your fingers and
never give up.
Yeah, and hope that you're going to get the funding. I had one veterinary medicine student that applied with me once for 2 proposals, and she got both. So sometimes you're really lucky.
Oh,
It means she
yeah,
could
that's
put
really
that
lucky.
one down. So, yeah, so I think that's a really good way to get a first bit of research experience. You know, it doesn't have to be in the lab. You know, it could be like epidemiology studies or in the field or whatever. And then I suppose the next sort of level up would be something like a placement year, you know, which is also a really good research experience, which you can sort of do research and work at the same time, you know, a bit of both. It doesn't have to be all research. But there are other things you can do. This summer, I had a student email me and they said, can I just shadow someone for a while? You know, and so that wasn't too much of a commitment for me, which was really quite hard because we still had some fair restrictions because of the pandemic. Yeah. But you know, we could have someone in shadow and just, you know, see and ask questions and have everything explained to them. And, you know, so they learn about the process of research, and also, you know, how everything works, and, you know, the sort of things you do and you're thinking about.
Yeah.
So shadowing is a good thing. And if students want to go on to Learn, which is the RVC's course platform, there is one course called the Employability Hub. That's got quite a lot of information about these sorts of opportunities, if students want to look.
Yeah, I actually applied for the summer studentship in my second year. Then the pandemic started, and then they say, "Oh, too bad, we can't do it this year." So I did put some effort in this.
Yeah, well done for you offered it. Yeah. Just a shame. I mean, yes, the pandemic's really made it really hard. Students at the moment who are, you know, graduating or will be graduating soon, you know, they are not coming out with the same amount of research experience as previous years, and but that is known by people that would be employing them, or, you know, interviewing them for PhDs or whatever it might be. So you know, that is taken into consideration. But one of the benefits actually has been that a lot of students have got more experience at doing research using the computers, you know, and so people have actually gone and decided, oh, I'm going to learn how to do some coding so I can do better data analysis and things like this, which is exactly what the future scientists will be doing. And so, you know, we've really found that students are upskilled with those now. Yeah, which is
kind of like a dry lab. It sounds like, is it called dry lab? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, different names for similar thing, dry lab or in silico biology, or yeah,
that's the future. And our last question, if there is one, can you please share the funniest story in your career, other than the person beside you contaminate your solution?
Actually, that wasn't my story. It was one I heard.
I guess so.
Yeah, this was a hard one because like I laugh at bad things happening, but I'm not sure other people would find them funny. So,
I find the solution quite funny.
yeah. Yeah, so first of all, I thought, oh, well, you know, there was the time that when I was doing a postdoc, my boss said to me, I've been invited to give a seminar at this conference in Florida, but I can't go. Would you like to go and give the seminar, Claire? And I was like, oh, okay. You know, and then I realized it's like a conference for principal investigators, like not actually for people like me. And then when I got there with my 15 minutes prepared, and I was going to be doing it, I think, in 2 days' time. And then I saw the schedule, and I was scheduled for 30 minutes. I only had 15 minutes of talk prepared, so I spent the next day trying to gather more stuff to put in so I could talk for 30 minutes. You know, I was like emailing people saying, could you send me that other data? You know? So that was, anyway, so that was one I thought of, but then I thought of something that's maybe a bit more relevant, which is, so obviously, you know, that I'm the placement year leader. And so I do talk to a lot of students about work experience and how important that is and everything. And, you know, I think most students know that I'm the person that they can come and talk to if they're a bit stuck along those lines. But anyway, my daughter's 21 and she's doing biological sciences at Edinburgh. And I haven't managed to get her to do any work experience yet. And she's nearly in at the end of her 3rd year.
No.
Yeah, I feel like I have failed terribly.
Well,
Yeah.
daughters usually don't listen to their mom, do they?
I think this is the problem. This is the problem. I've tried everything, you know. I like sit there with some emails up and go and say, oh, look at this opportunity, and just doesn't go in.
Well, if you can, yeah, if it's okay, as long as you can get other students to do it.
Yeah, I just have to, yeah, I know. You'll probably realize, when it's too late, that she should have done it. Yeah. Hey ho.
The life will find its way. So.
That is very true. Everyone finds a path, don't they? So yeah. I'm not that worried. She's doing very well otherwise. So.
Yes, that's good. You should be proud.
I am. I have to say that because she might watch the video.
Yes, you'll be on YouTube.
No, honestly, I'm very proud.
Oh, that's very cute. Oh, thank you today for coming, Claire. I was going to say Dr. Russell, but I was called you Claire. It's
so
very
I
lovely.
always say to call me Claire anyway. So.
Yeah, Claire. It's very lovely to have you this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay, Max, would you like to show up?
Yeah, hello. Could we have 2 questions, if that's all right? And I don't know if Sherry, who was also listening on the call, had any questions. I'll type them into the chat.
Here comes the question. How would you compare working in the bigger universities to working at the RVC?
Well, that's an interesting question because I also had a different type of position as well. So it's sort of, in a way, it's hard to compare because if I'd have come to the RVC as a postdoctoral researcher, I could have compared it more easily. But the RVC feels much more like I know very many more people, and you know, in that way, sort of more welcoming, more like a family in a way. Whereas at UCL and King's and Imperial, I sort of knew a very small set of people, and I would never have known who the principal was, or you know. Yeah, I just actually at UCL I did go and see I think they were calling the vice provost, go and talk once, because they did do presentations about the university to staff there, but it's very informal. Very formal. Whereas here, when I first met the principal, was at a Christmas party, and he was doing card tricks. I was like, that feels very different.
Yeah.
So just generally, it's I think working at the RVC is actually feels more comfortable.
Yeah.
And you sort of feel more welcome and part of it, and actually that you can actually have more influence as well on what happens, which is nice.
Yeah, I saw principal in Buttery as well. I was quite surprised. That's that kind of feeling, like, oh wow, hi principal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next, is there a second question? Could we please hear your solution story? You mentioned the contaminated solution.
Well, I'm not sure that I can really, because it was a story that someone else told, so I don't think I can. I don't think I can say anything more about that.
Okay, so confidential stuff. But we all know your solution get contaminated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think whether there's something equivalent, but nothing's coming to mind at the moment.
That's okay.
Thank you very much for coming for us. I think
Thank you.